Welcome everybody to another edition of the Fantasy Golf Insider webcast and podcast. I'm Jeff Bergerson. My screen name is JT Bergerson. Joined as always by my partner, Zach Turcotte, whose screen name is mysteriously.
Howdy.
We are with fantasygolfinsider.com, where you should become a premium member. Zachary, you wanna talk about your hat here?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Wacky Wagers a couple weeks back with Ryan Sabotny down in Dallas. We had the stakes with that we could actually pick up by the bone off the plate. And we did a Wacky Wager a couple weeks back, and I managed for once to get 6 of 6 through on a Wacky Wager, so I was promised a cowboy hat. So this is going to definitely be one of the better prizes here that we win this season. So.
For those of you listening to the podcast, Zach has a very nice cowboy hat on this evening. It looks good. This broadcast is also available on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review, and also become a member or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just click subscribe underneath our video, and you'll know exactly when our video comes out every week. Before we get started, a special shout out goes to an FGI premium member who had a big week last week. Todd Decker came in second in a GPP on DraftKings out of a field of 2,600 people. Wow. So that's a sweet accomplishment. Good job, Todd. Nice work on that. We will recap the Valspar. First, I just wanted to discuss a topic.
I had a good finish too.
Oh, you had a good finish? All right, tell them about your finish.
I did. Well, it was good because my cash teams got crushed. So whenever you have I always hesitate to play a guy across the board in 3 lineups. And sure enough, I went against that this week and stuck Danny Lee in across the board on all 3 and cruising along on Sunday watching him go, thinking, well, this round is garbage. But, overall he's going to put up an okay number of points. And then suddenly everything just stops after the 10th hole. And I get that feeling of just impending dread as I'm waiting for him to tee off on 11. Again and again and again. And then I look back about 10 minutes later and I no longer see his name. And I immediately...
You know what that means.
I immediately know what has happened. So the cash games between that and then O'Hare's withdrawal. So I managed to hit 2 withdrawals over the weekend, which is just amazing luck as far as that goes. Because you have no indication ahead of time that these things are going to happen. So the cash games were a struggle. But I did put in a GPP team for $530 that ended up taking second place. It was a small field event, which is what I like to play. I'd much rather play against 20 people or 40 people for a high dollar kind of buy-in. And then you don't have to be quite as perfect. You can have a little bit different of a strategy. And my strategy is just to focus on being pretty conservative with the type of plays I have. So I didn't have any players on that lineup that were over 10,000. I really just wanted to try to get 6 through the cut if it weren't for Freddie Yak blowing his nose all over the lineup. I definitely would have won the thing. So it was a good week. I ended up taking second place, and I actually got quite a few questions from folks because people see when you post that and they see your score, and you're only against 20 other people.
Yeah.
And so immediately you get about 15 tweets. I had teams that were higher than that.
In large fields.
I need to play in that too, and I always say, well, yeah, they're not going to stop you from playing if you do that. It just requires a little bit of an adjustment in terms of the strategy that you're going to use, as well as an ability to be a little bit more tolerant of the wider swings on your bankroll.
Well, you need a bigger bankroll.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I mentioned to people. And this week I'm going to take some time with my column to just focus on when is that time to move up. When do you start to feel comfortable moving up into that bigger field, into that $300, $500, or $1,000 range, because in the next couple of weeks, those qualifiers are going to start that you love so much.
Yep.
For $1,000 a week or $300 to qualify for the World Championship.
Yep.
And I know we have a lot of people out there who are eager to take a shot this year and hopefully to join us out this year in Boston. So I'm going to write a little bit in my column tomorrow about different strategies to use as you get into a smaller field and a higher buy-in, and also when is it actually time for you to move up. So it was a good week. I was able to make a pretty nice profit off of that, in spite of the fact that the cash teams were a little bit ragged.
So kind of speaking of ragged, I've gotten a couple of emails from a couple of real great members of ours, Ron Van Elsis and Matt Schilling, kind of asking that question, what's going on? If we've had a few bad weeks, bad stretch, What do you do? And I kind of equate this, Zachary. You and I have played quite a bit of poker.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like in poker when they refer to running bad.
Yeah.
And I have quite a few friends who are some of the best poker players in the world. And I talked to one today, and I just wanted to get his take on it, because when you're playing poker, it seems like sometimes no matter what you do, you go in ahead and you get sucked out on, you're not making the right reads, nothing's working out good. Sure. So I asked him, what do you do when you hit this situation? He says something that I started doing last week, and it's kind of just step away from things. I kept my process the same. I did the research, I built my rosters, did everything the same, except I just scaled down my bankroll big time.
Yeah.
I played a fraction of what I normally play, and I just kind of observed, rather than you get emotional with it and you're not seeing things as clearly.
Who gets emotional? Me? You?
When you don't have a bunch of money, you
outrageous.
see things that maybe you wouldn't see if you were tied into it.
Sure.
And, there's a lot of confidence involved in DFS, as crazy as it sounds, and the same as in poker. When you're feeling confident, you're feeling like you're in the groove, you play better.
Making that aggressive play as opposed to being
timid. Yeah, you're afraid, and I
game.
found myself doing that in GPPs, which is not my style. I had a lot of success last year playing in GPPs, and the last few weeks I have not done well in GPPs, and I'm the first to admit it, and it's killing me. I hate losing, Zach. You know that.
No.
I took a step back, and I'm going to do it again this week, and just observe, do everything the same, and until I feel comfortable, till I can see. And I'm glad I did last week, because I didn't have Charles Schwartzel, I didn't have Bill Haas, but I'm gonna feel more comfortable before I get back in full bore. And
well, you get the Masters coming up, so kind of like the players that are out there right now, you want to tune up for the Masters, because that's when. And I was explaining this to one of our members who is a little higher level player last week. We were talking back and forth. That's when you want to usually scale up a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
Those are the opportunities when all the novices flood into the game.
Yep.
They want to just take a shot on playing for the weekend. Besides the Millionaire Maker, you know what? Let's throw in a few double ups this week too.
Right.
We'll just throw in the same
lineups
here with a bunch of long shots. We're going to put Freddie Couples on the roster. We're going to put a lot of other guys who have really no shot of making the cut, and that's going to be a good chance to take advantage of the opportunity. So, if there's any good time to try things out, it would be over these next couple of weeks. I mean, this will be a good tournament this week, but then you've got the match play after that, which there will be nothing, and then the week before the Masters, that's definitely a tournament to scale back on. You never want to get too big the week before, because most of the bigger players are going to take that week off anyways. And the guys who are playing the Masters the following week, they're really just using it more or less as a tune-up.
Right.
Plus, what we saw last year, which was a complete nightmare, was before the U.S. Open at the St. Jude, Dustin Johnson went out there, played 9 holes, decided things weren't going so well, and withdrew. So there's always that little bit of extra risk as well. So take the next few weeks to fine-tune your game a little bit, and then really get ready to load up on the Masters, because that typically is the best opportunity. And you're going to have extra time to prepare. Typically, they'll put the prices out a week or two early.
Right.
So you'll have 2.5 weeks to do your research this time around. So you shouldn't be caught unprepared when it actually starts in a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you got a couple options. You can just hang it up and quit. Or you can, try scaling back. Look, the information that we give you guys is good enough to be profitable. We've been profitable for 2 years now, and you go through stretches like this. It hasn't happened to a lot of you yet because we've been so consistently good, but when we go through stretches like this, you have to just scale back a little. Matt and Ron, I know, are good players. They read all of our stuff, and I have confidence that they're going to be successful.
And you got to look at what's happening with the rest of the field. I mean, if that's the big thing, is where you are relative to everybody else.
Yeah.
Last year, it was pretty normal for 12 to 18% of teams to have 6 of 6 through the cut.
Oh, yeah.
It's down to about 2 or 3%
every week.
In a lot of games, maybe 4 or 5 at the most. So when you're seeing the entire field struggling like that, as far as your opponents are concerned, it's really something to be concerned. If you're only getting 2 or 3% through, and the field's getting 15% through,
Yeah.
then you're
Right.
probably doing something wrong. But
Right.
if you're tracking along with where things are with the field right now,
Yeah.
it's probably just a really difficult stretch of golf that's going on.
Yeah.
And what we've seen in the tournaments, the cut lines have been much higher in terms of the numbers. I mean, we're looking at +3, almost +4 last week. Same a couple weeks ago with the Honda. So the numbers have been much. The courses have played quite a bit tougher, and it's caught a lot of good players off guard so far this year. So don't despair too much. Step back, play a little bit lighter for a few weeks, wait for the big events to come around when everybody comes spilling in, and that's the time when you're going to start to rebuild.
Be patient.
Yeah.
Should we talk a little bit about Valspar last week? We've talked slightly about it, but
sure.
Any highlights for you?
Well, I was pretty excited with the performance of Charles Howell III.
Right.
He's a guy who we've written up over and over and over again. He's just really consistent. He makes a ton of cuts. He's only really missed the one cut this season a couple of weeks back, and he only missed that by one shot. So we weren't really going to hold that against him. It was actually all the way up into first place at one point, but we knew he wasn't going to win.
Guaranteed.
Yeah,
I was rooting for him
because I would have had the bottle of Makers right here on the table, and I just would have plowed the thing for a Charles Howell III victory because he's never going to win. You're watching this, Charles.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I'm sure he's watching.
I know, but you're not getting it done. I'm trying to use my black magic again.
Yep.
So that was good. You know, Ryan Moore was very good. I was happy to.
He was in our optimal lineup. One of the few bright spots.
Yeah,
in the optimal lineup.
And we just had bad luck again.
Yeah.
I mean, we
two
had
withdrawals in one lineup is bad.
That's going to crush you. Yeah. So we had a rough run there, and that's why we would always recommend play 3 lineups for your cash games.
Yep.
I thought about last week, let's just try playing this one, and I just thought better of it. And I went with 3 losing lineups.
But
instead.
you were proving what not to do. So you
exactly.
took it for the team.
Yeah, well, so I spread it out through 3 different lineups, and they still didn't fare particularly well with the withdrawals. So that was a little bit frustrating, but overall the picks were reasonably good. It was a little bit frustrating to see guys slide back, like Kevin Streelman just didn't compete at all.
What the hell?
Yeah, I mean, right off a cliff the first day, +8, and they ended up +11, which was a surprise because he'd been playing pretty well. I'm not normally a Streelman fan.
No, I'm not either.
And so it was pretty rare for me.
But at his price, I thought he was pretty reasonable.
Pretty good.
Cut maker.
Yeah, a good cut maker.
Yep.
So he was a guy who definitely hurt us a little bit. Freddie Yock, again, Roger's favorite guy.
I had 0 Freddie Yock. I have no faith in Freddie Yock. Much.
I shouldn't either. But these are tournaments that he typically does pretty well in. He makes the cut, and he's got the chance to be in the top 25. That's all I was looking for with him. He didn't get it done, so Roger actually started...
I saw him trying to weasel out of your bet.
Begging his way out of the bet within a month after making it, which is outrageous. That's definitely not going to happen after all the trash that he talked leading into the bet. Then no, I'm gonna hold on to that one good. I don't even like champagne, and we're probably gonna order a bottle. So that's going to happen. So Freddie Yock was a disappointment for us. The 2 guys that surprised me were Webb Simpson and Harris English. Harris
English, big time.
Harris than Webb. Both of them were in really good shape after day 1.
Yep.
And neither of them played well at all on day 2, which was a shock to see Harris miss the cut. I thought he was just rock solid for a top 25 last week.
Yep.
So he was a guy who crushed a lot of lineups. Webb Simpson, he crushed a few lineups. I didn't own quite as much as him. Both those guys were a little bit of a surprise.
Well, we talked about Webb Simpson not knowing what his deal was because he had withdrawn the event before with undisclosed injury.
Yeah, so after day 1, I thought, wow, he's in good shape. He's -5.
I don't know what
or
his deal is.
-1, and then he shot +6 the second day to miss by 2 strokes. So that was underwhelming. But overall, we still had plenty of guys ended up doing reasonably well for the week. So I wasn't. Again, it was a struggle, but I ended up pretty profitable with my GPP win, and that's why we do a little bit of a balance right now. Is that you've got some GPP action, and you're just hoping that if you're consistent with your process week after week, and you go after the kind of contests that you're comfortable with, eventually you're gonna have some luck. You're gonna hit 1 or 2 of those, and it's gonna be profitable for you and really help pump up your bankroll a little bit if you're struggling with your cash games.
Let's turn the page on Valspar.
Done.
Let's do a shot for our shot of the week, shall we?
One of our favorites.
Who are we? We're taking a shot to our friend Keegan Bradley,
First the worst.
for pulling off the very rare feat of going from tied for first after round 1 to missing the cut completely.
It was astonishing.
After day 2.
I just kept rooting for it to happen as he was sinking down. It was a beautiful thing to watch.
I've asked our crack research staff to find out how often that's actually happened.
Yeah.
And they came up with nothing. But I would assume that it doesn't happen very often.
Somebody actually told me, David Frey actually mentioned to me, he said it was the second time Keegan's done it. So I don't know what else
in
it's
particular?
happened, but that's amazing. That means that you get a nickname if you do it twice.
Pull the Keegan.
Yeah, once is bad. But
So he posted an 8, a +8,
Yeah.
in his second round. In a 6-hole stretch on the back 9, he had 3 bogeys and 2 double bogeys.
Yeah.
So for a guy who's struggling as bad as Keegan has been lately, this cannot be good for his confidence.
No, I think he's 3-9 or 3-10 making the cut this year.
Ouch.
So he's just been atrocious, and it looked like we were going to be kicking ourselves
Right.
for finally missing, not being on him, and then just absolutely
Dead.
fell apart. So.
Keegan Bradley and your twitches. Don't forget, the shot of the week was brought to you by SwanniesFootwear.com, where if you go on and use discount code FANTASYGOLF, you'll get 20% off your order. Be sure to check out SwanniesFootwear.com. On to Wacky Wagers. You want to talk about that?
Do another one. No.
That didn't work out so well this week.
It was awful. I had a few different lineups that were out there, and this one actually had 4 different players miss a cut. 2 of them right on the line. I think I had did I have Keimer in that lineup? He was right at +4. I know I had Graham McDowell in that lineup.
Who are you playing this week?
His name was, he was going to give us a T-shirt.
Oh, yeah, the Kansas. The Kansas National Championship T-shirt.
Shirt that where all of those get sent off to Ethiopia after that team does not win. And so I got just slaughtered. He got 4 through all the way to Sunday. He lost Danny Lee, but I got 2 through the cut.
I loved how he said Kansas National Championship, hint, they didn't win.
Right.
That's awesome.
And now we should print up a shirt that announces our championship for that wager and send it to him.
Right.
So we didn't get that one done. So, yeah, that was a little bit frustrating.
We'll be sending out some swag.
And if you're looking to do a Wacky Wager with me, just get onto Twitter, take a picture of whatever it is that you want to wager, tweet it to us with the hashtag FGI Wacky Wager.
And you can win some of our swag.
Yeah, it's been kind of up and down so far this year. So it hasn't been quite so challenging for our challengers. So
on to this week's event, Zachary.
Yes.
The Matt Every Invitational.
Yes, you're all over him this week, aren't you?
I don't think I'm in on Matt Every this
What?
week.
Why?
I don't think so.
You don't like his current form?
I don't know.
You don't like the back-to-back titles?
I'm just kidding. It is the Arnold Palmer Invitational presented by MasterCard.
And Matt
Do we have
Every,
to say
right?
that?
Yeah, no, we're not going to say that.
Presented by MasterCard? That's so lame. But at least they keep Arnold Palmer. It's not like they drop the other names on the other tournaments. That's rude.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's still alive. When he dies, his name is gone.
They're just at this point they're just wheeling him out. It's like Bernie. It's like weekend at Bernie's. Here comes Arnie on the cart. You know, he's looking barely alive. Somebody picks up his hand.
Come shake Matt Every's hand.
Shakes the hand of his cold, lifeless hand. Shakes the winner's hand each year. What is that guy, like 106 or something?
He's pretty old.
Yeah. So he doesn't look young. He doesn't look young for like.
No, he hasn't. He's the king, though. He's a great guy. People love that guy. So
Yeah, he's got his own drink. You know, you're a good guy if you got your own drink.
he plays at it's played at Bay Hill Club and Lodge. Yardage is 7,419 yards, so a bit on the longer side than what we've been seeing lately. It's a par 72, 4 par 3s, 4 par 5s. It's a 120 player field this week, which is a key item to note.
Yeah.
Smaller field. Normally they're in the 140s, 144, 150s. This is a reduced field, so it's going to be easier to make the cut. So we can possibly be more aggressive.
You would think.
You should be able to get 6 guys through the cut, you'd think. But key stats this week: strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained putting. Really key stat this week. Got to be able to putt real well. Key correlation there. Birdies are better percentage. Par 5 scoring. Par 3 scoring over 200 yards. All the par 3s are over 200 yards, and proximity to the hole between 100 and 150. If you've not checked out our model, please do so. You can weight the stats however you want to, whatever percentage we put it at our standard allocations every week, so you can use that, or you can change it your own. It's completely interactive.
It won't cost you $500 for an annual subscription, right?
No, it won't.
No, it's much cheaper than that. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so
yes.
just save some money.
That's right. You want to talk about this field this week, Zachary?
Yeah, it's a nice field this week.
Yeah, it is.
Last week, a little bit on the soft side. We
Yep.
get a few of the bigger names back in the mix this week, so definitely excited about that. Looking for guys who are pretty strong in terms of their long iron play.
Long iron play, key.
So I think that's going to be key. You know, if we look at the top, we got Rory there staring us in the face again, and everybody's got to be wondering at this point, is he going to be showing up on Sunday?
Yep. Yeah, I think he does. I'm not going to have a tremendous amount of Rory, just because I think we can get good value right below him. Although I do think Adam Scott and Henrik Stenson will be extremely highly owned this
You think
week.
people are going to go back in for, now that they've been burned by not being on Scott the second time, they're coming back for the third time?
I think they're going to dip down from Rory to Scott, and then Stenson, you look at his tournament history, which
Stenson would be the guy I would guess would be the highest owned in that range.
I would agree.
People are obsessive with tournament history, even though we would say maybe 10 to 15% is about the proper weighting, just to give the field a little bit of context. That's what draws people's eyes in.
Yes.
They see those single digits there, and they just start to shake with excitement.
Yep.
And so,
but the thing about Stenson too is his stats are line up really great here. Putting, long iron play, everything fits for Stenson this week.
I like him this week. He's been a slight disappointment the last couple of weeks,
but they haven't been disasters.
No, exactly, and he rebounded a little bit at the end of the week. He should have probably ended up a top 10 player. He has ended up T11, so he was very close to being a top 10 for the week. So not too bad right there.
I kind of like Jason Day. Any interest?
I don't know. It looks like he's still in his warm-up phase. This is similar to last season where, and last season he and Spieth are almost on kind of parallel tracks from what they're doing last year, except both were a little bit better last year.
Yep.
You know, Day had the win at the Farmers, but it looks almost like Day is still in sort of a warm-up phase. It took him until really summertime after the U.S. Open. I mean, he was good at the U.S. Open, and then for the rest of the year, he was on a real upward trajectory. And it seems like that's what's happening this year, and there's less and less interest in him week after week at this point. They're looking at the tournament history this week. They're not seeing anything flashy.
Yep.
But if you look at the stats, if you look at the numbers, he should be a guy who really shines here.
He's ranked third in strokes gained putting on tour this year, so the putting game's there. I like him. He's a bit of a contrarian play. I don't think he's going to be owned by more than 15%. I think he's going to be owned by probably low double digits.
Yeah, I would say he'll probably be the lower guy in that range.
Yeah.
Just below him, you've got Justin Rose, who I think is also a really good pick,
I do too.
particularly for the GPP side of things. He's had some struggles here where he hasn't been great, but he's another guy who last year he started slow. This year he's been a little bit slow to start, but he picked it up. And as he cruised into the Masters, that's when he really kicked it into high gear, and then he had a really good rest of the season. And he's chronically under-owned. And if you're looking in that range, he's a guy who could definitely be owned by a few less folks than normal. So I think Rose is a pretty good play there. You like any of the other guys in that high range?
Well, we should note that Kevin Na has withdrawn from the tournament.
Or not. Maybe we don't want to tell people. He's typically very popular.
Wraps.
Right. Don't tell your friends. Yeah, so he's out this week. We just saw that, and he was 9,600. So he was pretty pricey.
What I think I'm going to do this week in a lot of GPPs is I'm going to stack one or two of the high guys. Scott, Stenson, Day will be the major three. And then I'm going to drop down. I'm not going to have a whole lot in that 9,000 range.
No, you don't like anybody there, huh?
Not as much. No, I like those studs.
It makes me a little nervous because we had Na withdraw. Snedeker is right there, but he just withdrew. We don't really know. In golf, when guys withdraw, you have no idea what the injury is, how extreme it was. If they're still in the field the following week, you think, well, maybe he's recovered, maybe not. I mean, maybe.
But then if he puts up a poor first round, he could bail early.
Exactly, and so that's definitely a threat there. So there really is not a lot there in that range. You've got Kuchar at 9,400, who I like almost every week. He's another guy I was almost ready to write off on Saturday as he was slipping down the board. But Sundays this year, he's always brought it on Sundays. He's one of the few guys who, regardless of if he has a chance to win the tournament, you know you're going to get a focused round out of him. Sure enough, he shot -3, rallied up to 11th place. for the weekend. And so that's to his credit. That's what I like about Kuchar. He never mails it in. So I like that a lot about him. 9,400. I think he's more of a cash game play.
I think so too.
At that price. He's a guy you can start your lineup around at that level, but I'm not probably going to put him into a tournament.
I sent you a text the other day that said, I like Kuchar when he's in the upper eights, lower nines in a stacked field. That's when I like Kuchar the most.
Yep, because people are going to overlook him.
They're going to overlook him, and he's going to give you a 10th place finish or something, which is going to pay off his price. But weeks like last week when he's like in the top 10 in price, it's hard for him because he doesn't win a lot.
Yeah, it's tough. And he was lucky to rally back and get up to, I think, 11th place for the weekend.
There he finished there.
So I do like him, dropping down a little bit. There's not a lot of other names that I love. Are you going to go back to Harris English this week at 8,400?
I did not have a tremendous amount of Harris English last week, but now the price looks a little bit better. I would have no problem on Harris English.
That's a good cut maker price.
Yes, cut maker price. Another guy who would be kind of contrarian would be Zach Johnson this week. Good tournament history.
Game's been a little off.
Game has been really off.
Yeah.
However, I think 8,300 is a very good price.
Seems like it. Seems like you could use them in GPPs and for cash games this week. Although I do suspect at 8,300, you're going to start to see some people jumping on there.
The only thing is, Harris English is right next to him. Charles Howell III's right underneath him at 8,000.
That's right.
And I think he's going to be a popular pick. Byung-Hyun An is another guy who I think...
He'd be contrarian.
He would be contrarian at 8,100.
Sort of frustrated people the other week with his performance at WGC.
He finished like 50-something at the WGC.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
Again, he was hyped up like he was last year.
Well, and it's a tricky tournament. That's one of those tournaments where you just don't need to play first-timers. I mean, there's certain events throughout the year with challenging courses. You look at Riviera. You look at Honda. You look at the WGC at Doral. Those are all courses where it's just best to kind of avoid those flashes, those flashy sort of plays where guys are coming over from Europe and they look great.
And that flashy play this week is?
Oh, boy. You better let me know on that one.
Thomas Pieters.
Okay. So, so he was
Guy's a stud.
So he was over in Thailand. What did he take, second or third?
Finished third last week.
Scott Hen remembered how to play golf this weekend. Yay, Scott Hen.
That is, painful.
He's plus 22 at the WGC. One of the guys that I liked.
Crippled a good lineup.
Liked as a throwaway pick, and then all of a sudden he rallies back. A week later, goes to the other side of the world in Thailand and shoots minus 18. So I realized the course over there is considerably easier than what it's at the WGC, but
still
unbelievable. This
wasn't a bad field that he beat, but Thomas Pieters is a great player. He won back-to-back last year on the European Tour. Has a couple runner-up finishes. A lot of power there.
I don't like his price, though. That's a big
7,600 isn't bad, but he's going to be overlooked this week.
Sure.
I wish it wasn't his first event back.
Right. That almost never seems to go well for these guys. I mean, these guys just blow up. And if he were 6,600, I could see taking some more shots. But he's had success in Europe on the European Tour now.
Yes.
And so that's greatly going to push his odds up in that direction.
He played well in the WGC in the fall.
Yeah.
He looked pretty good, so I wouldn't have a problem with him. Yeah, so did Scott Hen. Also in that range, Brandon Steele, 7,700.
What a solid player
he
is. I mean, just week after week, Brandon Steele, just looking you in the face. You expect him to actually be a little higher. Typically, you're going to see him at around like 8,300, 8,400, somewhere in that range. So to get him at 7,700, I think that's a pretty nice discount.
For cash game and GPP, actually.
Yeah, I think he's got good upside. He's a guy who's almost always got top 20 potential. So I definitely like Brandon Steele.
Keegan Bradley a fade this week?
Oh, my God. Until we see something with some amount of consistency, he's going to splash one of these weeks. Somebody will be all over him, and they'll make all the money. But you may have to wait a couple months for that to happen. I mean, he's really fallen. His confidence at this stage has got to be shot. And he's already a little bit of a head case to begin with. So you have to figure you want to just stay away. Let him show one or two events. If you miss it, that's fine. But he's a really aggressive play at this stage, although he does have a pretty nice tournament history here.
He does. So if you drop down, the guy who's sticking out to me at 7,300, again, Smiley Kaufman, I think is severely underpriced. Again, for what he brings. So I would lock and load him, although I think he's going to be owned by about 15+% this week in that range. Anyone else in that area that you like?
Looking down, Ches Reavie just keeps making cuts, and he keeps finishing well.
He does.
He finished 22nd again this past week, he's 9 of 11 this season, which Ches Reavie's always been a little bit of a streaky player.
Yeah.
He'll have
for
2
sure.
or 3 tournaments in a row where he's great, and then 4 or 5 where he's not so great.
Yep.
This year, he's really been able to sustain it week after week. So I think they're at 7,200. I think that's a pretty nice play. So, looking down, another guy who started the season just terrible, but was one of our favorite guys last season, George McNeil.
George McNeil, is he back?
At 7,000. I don't know if he's all the way back. This is a tournament where I think he's made 5 or 6 straight cuts. So that obviously will attract a little bit of attention. But he's made the cut the last couple weeks after missing about 6 in a row before that. And he's played pretty well. I want to say he finished 11th this past week after making the cut 2 weeks before
He's
at the Honda.
He's another streaky guy who
Very
goes
streaky.
on runs.
But it looks like if you're going to use a guy, I'm certainly not going to recommend him for cash. But if you're looking for an interesting GPP option, he's priced a little bit higher. I see a lot more people dropping down into the 6,000 range to pick up their scrub players.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I think McNeil he's still kind of a plain sort of player. He's never, it's George McNeil.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody really knows the name. The name doesn't stand out. So I think people will still overlook him. And I think he can be a good cut maker at 7,000.
I have a bit of a soft spot in my heart for George McNeil.
Yes, he's
because he was on my roster when I won a seat into the World Championship. So
unfortunately, he was not on our roster at the World Championship.
Yeah, that's true.
So we were pretty excited about that.
Another couple names that stick out. Bryson DeChambeau is in
7,200.
the field.
Yeah,
that's a little steep for him, but guy's a stud.
Yeah, that's tough coming in right away at 7,200. You'd almost rather have him down somewhere in that 6,500, 6,600
But then
range.
he's going to be higher owned, though.
I don't know. I think most people, there's going to be a few folks out there that have heard of him that are going to talk him up a little bit. But I think for the most part, people are going to be off him. I can only see a couple percent at the most.
How about your guy?
My guy.
Your guy.
Which guy
Maverick.
is that?
Maverick's in the field.
Yeah,
Yes.
he is. He's making his first start of the season.
Yes.
The Stanford kid, the kid who can't decide if he wants to be a billionaire running his dad's
Billionaire
company.
mogul.
Right, or play professional golf. Life's really hard, isn't it?
Tough decisions.
And your name is Maverick McNeil.
I know.
It's an awesome name.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just go on to Vegas and start playing cards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's outstanding.
Dude's getting laid. Promise you that.
You think so? He looks
Yeah.
like a munchkin.
Yeah, the guy's a billionaire.
Wow, he will. Yeah, he will be. I'm sure there's a few red panty nights in his Stanford dorm room.
Thank you, Connor.
We're gonna start using that a lot. I love that.
My favorite line from Conor McGregor.
It's fantastic. So I don't know what to think of him this week. We liked him last year when he played in his one event and he made the cut. I think he maybe played in 2 events. But the week he first came out, we wrote him up and he did really well and he was actually contending for a little while. It's a little bit like Lee McCoy was this past weekend. But
I looked at his stats and his results playing at Stanford this year. He's obviously their number 1 player, but it's been mixed. Last time out wasn't a great round for him. So maybe if you want to take a shot in GPPs, no one's going to own him.
I was the one guy who owned him last year in the 300, and he did me well. So yeah, that is true. So he's out there. Coming down though, there's a few guys who are in that middle 6K range. My boy Will Wilcox, everybody's boy.
Yeah.
He actually tweeted out last week that he was feeling good and ready to go, and told everybody to push send. So late Wednesday night, I threw him into my big $530 GPP lineup. And by Friday afternoon, I was one of many people who was cursing him out as the bogeys started to accumulate. He slipped below the cut line, and then down the stretch the last day, I worked my black magic. Again, people still question me on it. I put it out there on Twitter. Why did I trust this guy? And of course, I get all these messages later on like, you have to know what I'm doing by this point. I tell you every week what I'm trying to do. And it worked again. He rallied back, 3 birdies, made the cut, hit a couple eagles over the weekend. So definitely paid off his price for 6,800. Explosive player.
Yep.
If he could just play consistent golf, he could be a real star.
Yep, 6,600 is a good price. How far is Tony Finau going to fall before you get interested?
I mean, he's down to 5,900 now.
5,900. Any interest this week?
Well, he's kind of hitting Mike Weir territory.
Oh my gosh, there's not a whole lot of guys below him this week. Maybe a dozen or so?
Yeah, it's ugly. And it's still in Florida, so it's really tough to say. I mean, when you look at his splits in terms of his putting between Bermuda grass and Poa, it's tremendous.
I know.
There's a huge gulf in between how well he does. And so even at that price, I still am going to have trouble taking a swing. I saw
even in a reduced player field where he
a couple
can make
guys
the cut.
last week took big swings. A couple of the big pros took big swings. I expect that to happen again. There's going to be a couple guys who just take big swings. And he only missed the cut last week by 1 stroke. So he is right there. He does really struggle in Florida. So you're certainly playing with fire. But much like Hudson Swafford a week ago at $5,900, that's a great price for a guy who does have some upside. And speaking of Hudson, he'll be the last one that I kind of mentioned. He's down there at $6,300.
Yeah.
Played well getting past the cut, terrible over the weekend, but, did pretty well here last year.
Got past the cut?
Yeah, he's a good long iron player. He finished 11th here a year ago, so he's another guy who I would think you'd be all right with taking a shot at in that lower range for the week.
Robert Streb's another guy at 6,500.
Right. Missed 2 cuts here, but he's been pretty good this season.
He's been all right.
Yeah.
Not like he was last year.
He's been a pure
obviously.
cut. He went from being cut maker with upside last year to pure cut maker again this year.
Yep.
But the price is down. Last year, he was at this point about an $8,000 player. Now you're getting him for $6,500. So I don't dislike that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Florida stretch, but he's actually played reasonably well in the 2 events that he's lined up in so far in Florida. So I'm not totally against that.
Okay. Anyone else that you want to mention?
No.
Why don't you mention them in your article?
Yeah,
for the premium
members. I've been so good with the sleepers lately.
Be sure to email us with any questions, strategy-wise or otherwise, info@fantasygolfinsider.com. Our Twitter handle is @fantasygolfers. Zach does Periscope on Wednesday nights, sometimes later than others when he goes to Carly Rae Jepsen concerts.
Yeehaw!
How'd that go, by the way? Tell them about it.
It was a great show.
Yeah?
It was a great show. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I told somebody on there, too. They made fun of me. And they said, oh, it was you and Bergerson that were actually at the show. I said, no, Jeff wasn't there, but we did have 9th row seats to the George Michael concert.
That was a
the
great
last time he was
concert,
in
though.
town.
George Michael was solid.
Absolutely.
Why didn't he play Jitterbug, though? I don't get that. Wake Me Up?
Too commercial, man.
Yeah,
Too
right.
commercial.
Can't do it. Too good for that.
Right, yeah.
There had to be some MILFs at that concert, no? At Varsity?
At the Carly Rae Jepsen concert?
Yeah, bringing their daughters? No?
Ooh, I don't know if I'd call him that.
Oh.
That would be generous.
Okay, all
That'd be
right.
generous.
Fair enough. So,
Yeah.
what do you have to say?
I'm good.
Close us out. All right.
I'm good.
Oh, yeah, I didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Good luck this week at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and we'll see you next week.
Good luck.
What's your favorite website?
The golf one.
Oh, Fantasy Golf Insider. You got that? You got to remember that. You got it now?
Yes.
Okay, what's it called?
Fantasy Golf Insider.
Nice. There we go. Who's your favorite GPP play this week?
What does that even mean?
Sung Kang. You can probably pronounce it better than Eric can.